A peace plan without the plan. That's how analysts are seeing President Donald Trump's 20-point proposal to end the war in Gaza and prepare for the day after. Released by the White House on Monday, the plan promises a, quote, deradicalized and terror-free strip without Hamas rule, the restoration of aid through the UN and the Red Crescent, and a gradual withdrawal of Israeli troops. It maps out Trump's economic vision for the strip and proposes a security force trained by Arab states in coordination with the US. But if you look closely at the details, there may be only one well-defined item in that list that outlines a clear action and a timeline for it. Point number 4. It says, within 72 hours of Israel publicly accepting this agreement, all hostages, alive and deceased, will be returned. But all the other points are a bit more vague. Israel's military would have to retreat in a phased withdrawal, but the plan doesn't set any dates for this. There would be no occupation or annexation of Gaza, and yet a security parameter would remain in place indefinitely. Any future path for statehood is made conditional, laid out almost as an afterthought. It's not a perfect plan, but it's the only one on the table that has not only been supported by the US and Israel, but also backed by Arab and Western states. This is Beyond the Headlines, and I'm your host, Nadal Tahir. In this episode, we decode the fine print of Trump's plan for Gaza, and we ask, is it time to accept any end to the bloodshed and suffering, whatever the cost may be? For 2 years, ceasefire negotiations have hit wall after wall. For a brief moment earlier this year, a truce gave some hope that the war would end. But after Israel unilaterally broke it, the attacks on Gaza only seem to get more vicious. So how does Trump's new plan come to be the one that everyone seems to be on board with while Hamas is still studying it? I spoke about the details of the 20-point list with Antoine Rafoul, a Palestinian Nakba survivor. He says there was a very important element missing from it.
It is very, very sad, and it's very clear that Palestinians have no role whatsoever. They have not been consulted. Forget Hamas. Hamas is not the issue. Is Palestinian self-determination is the issue. The Palestinian community, the Palestinian nation is the issue here. Nobody had been consulted on this plan. And it is very sad that you discussed the state of a nation without involving the people of the nation. They had the Peking Agreement where everybody agreed. You can bring those people to your meeting because Palestinian factions agreed to talk to each other. But Netanyahu is always saying, we don't want Hamas. Trump says, we don't want Hamas. Hamas agreed already that we don't want to be involved in the administration of the Gaza Strip. But we will never compromise on the statehood of Palestine.
Antoine, the plan says no Hamas and no Palestinian Authority. What is the civilian administration that is being discussed in the plan? Who is it made up of? And what is its mandate? Can you tell us about this Board of Peace that is headed by former British Prime Minister Tony Blair and President Trump himself?
The Board of Peace, that's the board that will run the administration of Gaza for the next 2-3 years, is run by Zionists who really are known to be supporters of the settlements. It's a plan embedded in the colonialist mentality to bring Tony Blair in it, the guy who did the Iraq War, is a farce, is a terrible farce. They never talk about the Gaza people. Even the PA whom they pampered is not involved in the plan at all. And they don't want, because Netanyahu doesn't want even the PA, because the PA for him represents the Palestine state, which has been recognized. He doesn't want any of that. So we are talking about really a foreign body called the Board of Peace, brought in to run this place with people hungry and dying over a territory that has been destroyed by the West. Running it, and they say, hello guys, do you like what you've got in 3 years' time? We're going to spend nearly, my figures shows about 400 million in administrative cost. Administrative, not rebuilding cost. And then you read between the lines of the plan that has been agreed by Netanyahu. It's a Riviera in camouflage. Can you imagine Gaza being built on such a future. As an architect, Nada, when they say that, and I say, Gaza was never that.
All of this was supposed to be transitional, right? But so was the Palestinian Authority, which was supposed to exist for only 5 years. And here we are, 25 years later, past its expiration date now. There are other things, of course, that the Palestinians thought would be temporary, like the exodus of Palestinian refugees. So, how is anyone, especially the Palestinians, supposed to believe that any part of this plan will be transitional?
It won't be transitional. You know why? Because the Gaza Strip will return to what it was before. In this transitional period, say there's no bombing anymore, there's no war, the IDF will still control the Strip, yeah? The Palestinian people in Gaza will remain as they were before, under better conditions perhaps, because there's no war. The West Bank, which is the PA's domain, will still be controlled by the settlers and by the IDF, with the PA doing their bidding there. The transitional thing can never happen without election. Even Trump, in his last sentence, says a credible pathway to Palestinian self determination and statehood. How do you achieve that? Can you explain that to me without having elections? If you really want to build a nation, the first thing you do, you build the conditions for a democratic base to allow for elections. People are making something of Hamas as if it's a body that existed throughout the history of Palestine. It came out of the bloody blockade. It was created because of the conditions in Gaza. If those conditions are gone, they will be just ordinary Palestinians. They don't have to be freedom fighters. They don't have to be condemned as terrorists. So the transitional bit of it is mentioned, but it is not actually clarified. And my feeling is if there's no election, like you said, 25, 30 years, there has never been an election in Palestine. Who is representing who? I am in the diaspora. Nobody is representing me. You know, there are 60 million of us. Is that the nation that you are talking about, Mr. Trump?
How does Trump's plan compare to Oslo?
It's the same vagueness, the same promises, but no execution. Actually, it's much more vague than the Oslo. The Oslo Accords actually stated specific steps, but the plan of Trump is very vague. It's done in words that suit investors. You know, leave it, maybe tomorrow something will change, but yeah, we talked about that, but we're not specific about it. Oslo was very specific about Jerusalem, about the statehood, about settlements. And what scares me in your question, I want to say that there's very little difference because eventually Oslo, despite its specificity, was derailed by Israel. Here, it's even less specific. And that is very serious and very dangerous. When they shook hands in Oslo and left, they had a hope that in 3 years or 5 years, everything will be clear because it's written. Here, from day one after signature, you look at the wording and you say, what's happening today, by the way? You know, what's going on? What is the next step?
But there are criticisms that Palestinians living abroad don't get to criticize this plan when there are Palestinians in Gaza who cannot afford any more loss and grief and just want this all to be over with. And this seems to them, at least, that this will be the only way the war will end. I've seen videos of people saying that in a few hours everything will be okay once this plan is approved. So what do you actually say to that? How do you respond to that? Because surely they shouldn't have to sacrifice their children's blood for the sake of a perfect plan. So should Hamas just accept this plan because it simply exists?
It's a good point. And I thought about it before I talked to you. I was reading about it last night. I would say the same thing. The first thing I want to know is I want to wake up with no bombs. Plan, no plan, Jared Kushner, Board of Peace. I'm not interested. I really want to get up knowing that there's no drone going to hit me and kill me. That's the first reaction. It's a human reaction. Yeah? But the day after, on the day after that, what will happen? I can breathe the first week, the first month. No, there's no. But beyond the drones, there will be capitulation. There will be another force. It's not drone, but it's capitalism coming into Gaza. And the people eventually, through the peaceful existence for the month or 2 months or 3 months or a year, no bombs, their life is being controlled by this other body. And it's to their benefit, not to the Gaza benefits. And the Gaza people will be resident aliens in the strip because they have no control over it. I agree totally. I want to stop. I mean, that's the first thing I thought, that at least, but it's not guaranteed, Nada, because anything would derail it and will spike Netanyahu to start the war.
It's not guaranteed, right? And nothing is guaranteed. But what is being told to them is that this is your only way out of this. So, how can they reject something that could give them even a 1% chance for all of this to end?
We learn from history. And history, in the case of the Palestinian, is not very far. You look at the West Bank. They told us X, Y, Z. And if you don't accept it, too bad. We accepted it. Oslo, we accepted it. Look what happened. There were 70,000, 60,000 settlers, and now we have 700,000 settlers. How can I believe you if you told me this a few years back and it didn't happen? And now it's even worse because the governing body in Israel is even more extreme. I trusted you before and you let me down. How can I trust you now and you won't let me down? Okay, for a week, for 2 weeks. If you don't accept it, we're going to bomb you. What kind of rapport are we supposed to have? Let's not talk about 5 years, let's talk about 2 weeks. The exchange of prisoners, or the hostages. He is supposed to have all the hostages and then to move out of Gaza in phases. In March, he had the whole thing set up. Hamas accepted. But then he could change his mind like this in no time. So back to your question, we want to stop the bombing. It's not guaranteed. That's the problem with it. Of course, I don't want to be bombed. I will accept what you are telling me, but am I guaranteed a life after tomorrow?
It's not an easy question to answer, but for Palestinians in Gaza who have endured unspeakable suffering over the past 2 years, any respite is already long overdue. With almost 70,000 people killed, the enclave decimated, and children starved, there is only one priority above all else: stop the war. And what happens after, no one seems to know. I spoke to Amr Hamzawi, director of the Carnegie Middle East program, and asked him what he makes of Trump's plan.
First of all, it's important to situate the administration's plan, President Donald Trump's plan for Gaza, in the wider context, regionally as well as internationally. This is the first big diplomatic move since quite some time. Since the first and only ceasefire expired over a year ago, we have not seen much happening on the ground diplomatically, which has meant that the war has continued, the human tragedy has continued, with Gazans being pushed close to famine conditions. So in a way, when you look at the wider picture, regionally and internationally, I believe that it's a good step forward to restore some credibility to diplomacy. Secondly, it is good to see a diplomatic push coming from the US. We have wondered a lot prior to October 7, 2023, about the role of Russia, the role of China. But the fact of the matter is, away from regional actors, actually, the one big actor, external actor on the ground is the US. So for such a diplomatic push to be coming from the US is a good move as well. I believe it needs to be positively received. These 2 points do not mean that the plan is complete, that the plan is sufficient, and they do not mean that the plan does not need to be worked around and negotiated about in different ways. There are unclear components in the plan, especially regarding timelines. The plan spells out that for the Israeli army to leave Gaza, to retreat from Gaza, different conditions need to be met, and that is not quantifiable. When you say Gaza should not be a threat to Israel. I mean, that is, as an objective, definitely clear. How can you quantify it on the ground to let the Israeli army go back to its positions outside of the strip or to a buffer zone?
And with regards to the buffer zone, isn't that a de facto annexation of Gaza?
Yes, it's a de facto annexation of a part of Gaza. However, in the Middle East, and once again, I mean, I'm a realist. My objective is for the Palestinian population in Gaza to avoid being displaced, to avoid an ongoing humanitarian catastrophe as we've been seeing in the last 2 years. Gaza needs to be, from a security perspective, from a governance perspective, re-engineered in a way which brings Gaza close to the West Bank and restores some credibility to the two-state solution and the objective of a Palestinian state. Have we had demilitarized zones between Israel and its Arab neighbors following different wars? Yes. I mean, the Golan Heights is one. I mean, you do have a demilitarized zone, a buffer zone. We've been having arrangements around buffer zones in the region, and that wouldn't be first off. It's a way of settling conflicts, tough conflicts, in a reassuring manner for different parties. The question is, if the buffer zone is granted, what do Palestinians get in return? I mean, how can we make sure that the retreat of the Israeli army is upheld according to timelines? Who is a guarantor of the Israeli government whose objectives and leanings are clear to everyone? This is a right-wing radical government. Who can hold this government accountable when Hamas disarms? Who can hold them accountable to retreat, to leave Gaza, to abide by the stipulations of the agreement? The US will have to do it. Now, the question becomes, is the US administration willing to invest the political capital and diplomatic capital needed?
Let's discuss some of the clauses in the plan. The US said it would work with Arab and international partners to develop a temporary international stabilization force. What is this force?
If you are hoping and agreeing upon the principle of the Israeli army not annexing Gaza, a buffer zone is to be delineated, but beyond the buffer zone, the presence on the ground of Israeli boots should not be part of what we're looking at. You need a security force to manage Gaza, because you're not only saying Israel will retreat, but you're also saying Hamas will play no role. The question is not about to my mind, not about the principle of forming an international stabilization force. No, the question is which countries are going to contribute. If you read the plan carefully, the reference is to Egypt, Jordan, and the US. I am not sure to what extent are Egyptians and Jordanians willing to put Egyptian or Jordanian boots on the ground in Gaza. I understand the political will on both sides, in Egypt and Jordan, to be going in the direction of training Palestinian forces under the supervision and leadership of the Palestinian Authority. Would they be willing temporarily to participate in an international stabilization force? This is a policy question which needs to be discussed. I do not assume that the US is going to be willing to put American boots on the ground. So can the US motivate actors elsewhere? My advice would be, it would be much better to avoid an Arab presence. It would be much better to have a UN-mandated international stabilization force manned by soldiers, officers from countries outside of the Middle East.
Is this a plan that's repackaging Trump's Gaza Riviera plan that everyone laughed at in the beginning?
The big difference between the two plans is that displacement is being spelled out as a red zone, as a no-go zone, which is no longer a political objective. And therefore, I'm seeing a great improvement, which comes again in the background of not only Arabs, Egyptians, Jordanians, Gulf Arabs saying no, but actually Palestinians not leaving. It's a realization that we really have to cherish, and we have to keep pushing forward as a political objective. However, and here I come to a second point, the devil is in the details. There are so many details which need to be negotiated, and discussions are bound to continue.
When looking at the plan and the fact that the Palestinians in Gaza want anything just to make the bombardment stop. They're very desperate. They've lost everything. They just want to look forward. They just want to know that they are not at risk of death at any given moment. So naturally, they would be advocates of this plan, but they also do realize, and we've heard them say this, that the plan is not fair and does not treat all sides equally, and certainly does not favor the Palestinians who have been under Israeli occupation and bombardment? Are we in a place where we just don't want the perfect to be the enemy of the good, where coming up with a perfect plan would be nearly impossible at this point in such a quick turnaround? And so we've presented them with something rather than nothing and then told them, you have to accept.
Well, no one is telling the Palestinians you have to accept. And I believe this is an extremely important notion to spell out. I'm referring to regional actors who have sided with the Palestinians and with the Palestinian cause: Egypt, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Qatar, and elsewhere in the region. No one is telling the Palestinians what to do. However, the picture we're looking at is twofold. One, with the realization that no plan is perfect. However, what we're looking at is definitely an Israeli radical right-wing government resolved to continue, if not checked. The only way to check it is to get the US in. No one else can. This is not for regional actors to check the rogue Israeli behavior, which took them to bomb Qatar, Doha. It's good to see the US mediating, actively participating diplomatically in mediation efforts. Secondly, on the ground, the situation of the Palestinians is desperate. That does not mean that you have to do what's almost like a sail out, but you really have to take into consideration what can be achieved now and to what end. However, you have to put it in a wider context, and that wider context is we need timelines on the Israeli retreat. Secondly, we have seen enough of Israel blocking humanitarian aid, Israel not stopping its military operations, Israel not minding a famine unfolding on the ground and continuing the rogue behavior it's been practicing almost in the last 2 years. How can we hold Israel accountable? This question needs to be clarified. Who is going to hold Israel accountable? As much as the Palestinians or the Palestinian factions will be held accountable as well. Thirdly, I find the reference in the agreement, in the plan, to Palestinians not being displaced to be a very positive one. However, there is a second reference which I couldn't understand. I mean, why are you referring to the right to go and come back? I mean, what are you incentivizing? What are you signaling? I mean, it goes without saying that if you have mobility, if you have freedom of mobility, you can go and come back. Why does it need to be enshrined in the plan? This doesn't sound right. And so I'm a bit concerned about that stipulation, but it's important to say, no, Palestinians are going to stay where they are and services need to be provided in a human-worthy manner.
That's it for Beyond the Headlines. Visit thenationalnews.com to read, comment, and analysis of Trump's plan for Gaza. This episode was produced by Ban Barqawi and audio engineered by Arthur Edison. Dua Farid is our editor, and I'm your host, Nadal Tahir. Thank you for listening.